everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dredge. We are already on part 6, and honestly, I've been enjoying making this series, and I hope you've been enjoying it too. I have been working on this in my spare time, so the improvements will be a little slow, but I will keep trying to make these videos awesome. And without further ado, let's get into Dredge part 6. I started off the day collecting my catch from the crab pot and fishing for a couple of other fish. I ended up filling up my cargo hold with fish and treasures and then headed back to the merchant to sell it before heading back out to sea. Once night fell, I started fulfilling the researcher's request. I caught a firefly squid and continued around the basin looking for the other creatures. I then found a glowing octopus and decided to fish the spot and caught a Medusa octopus. So now that I was two-thirds done with the list, I was unsure how to catch the third and final one needed. I headed back to the merchant's pontoon and rested for the night, thinking the researcher wouldn't mind a couple of stale fish. Before I ended up docking, I did notice there was some mysterious red mist. Thinking it was fatigue, I rubbed the sleep from my eyes and got to the pontoon safely. I got a couple hours of sleep that night before heading out to drop the fish off with the researcher. On the way there, I decided to gather some materials to continue improving my ship and making it the best that it could be. I ended up making some small talk with the researcher, and one thing she said stood out, that being that I needed to experiment with different fishing strategies. I realized that there was one fishing strategy that I hadn't tried yet, so when I left, I headed back to the merchant with haste to try and get the gear I needed to implement my thought. My inner monologue when traveling these seas alone has lately been scattered. It's been hard to keep my thoughts in line, but with my goal at hand, at least I had something to focus on. I took care to empty the cargo hold and remove the hydraulic rod as I wasn't really catching bigger fish out in the ocean, and instead I bought and installed a troll net, being that I haven't tried this fishing method before. By the time it was installed, it was already night, so I decided to try it out. I put the net into the water and quickly ended up catching the aurora jellyfish that was needed to fulfill her request. I headed back to the researcher to turn it in. With the aurora jellyfish turned in, I had finished the list. She thanked me for catching all of the surface specimens that she needed before telling me that she needed some fish from deeper parts. I feel I was giving her a look, but she explained she had parts for a device that could do what she needed. I just had to go fetch them. I rested at the fort before heading back in the early morning to the original research base to gather the parts that were requested. I did remember seeing something on the table, so I decided to check there, and what do you know? I found the parts in a broken state and brought them aboard. I wondered how this would help me out, seeing as it looked like a pile of junk to me. As I was leaving, I noticed something weird in the water and I found a research part. I then decided to do a little more material hunting before turning in for the night as soon as the sun started to set. I rested and would head to the researcher in the morning. At dawn's first light, I headed straight to the researcher to deliver what she had asked for. The weather had started off fine, but as I got closer to the fort, the winds picked up, so I would have to be careful not to let it veer me off course. When I got there, we made some small talk while she assembled the parts into a device that would let me fish into the abyssal depths. I did have to make room for it, so I ended up removing the trawl from my boat to make space, as I don't think I would be using the trawl, at least for right now. As I was installing it, she brought me a part that she told me would make the creature retreat into the basin. I took great care to put the part safely aboard my vessel before she handed me another list of fish to bring her. While I was looking it over, I noticed that it was a few fish that lived in the deepest parts of the sea. With the equipment she gave me, I would be able to catch some, but I would have to find a way to bring her the others. I ended up finding one of them nearby, the loose jaw, and caught it quickly and brought it back to her just as fast. She did end up giving me a bit of a shocked face that I had returned with one so quickly. I did give the dog a quick pet on my way back to my boat after dropping off the loose jaw. On my way to install the part, I found and caught an anglerfish, so that marks the list she had given me as half done. With the anglerfish in my cargo hold, it was quickly filling up. I hope that whatever the researcher was looking for, it would be worth it, as the things I was catching for her came from the depths where only the most dangerous of creatures dwelled. Once I installed the part, I quickly turned it on, hoping it would keep the creature at bay and allow me to go into its territory. When I got there, I tried fishing, but everything was deeper than my equipment could reach. I even found the artifact the collector was looking for, but it was also out of reach. I went to the merchant and got a bottomless line that would allow me to get those fish in the Hadal depths. I installed it quickly and headed back, unsure of how much time I had left before the machine would stop working. I was able to catch a giant amphipod before I started to look for the last fish on the list. I started to feel uneasy of the time. Then the machine had turned off because I noticed the creature start to stir and spread its tentacles out. I left its area hastily so it wouldn't try and sink my vessel. I headed back to the researcher to drop the two specimens off, making the list now 75% done. I only needed the last one, which to get to, I would have to activate the machine again, so I ended up heading right back to the old lab. On my way there, I ended up finding a gulper eel, which was one of the fish that the merchant was looking out for. I was ecstatic to be able to find one and be able to help her out. I'm glad that the eel was so close to the lab because I didn't feel safe the more time I spent going into this creature's territory to grab the wildlife from within it, so I wanted to get it over with as quickly as I could. With a push of a button, the machine whirred back to life, sending pulses through the air, making the beast docile again. I made my way back to the center of the basin and caught the snailfish that the researcher had asked for. After that, I went into the dead center, and after a bit of a struggle, I pulled up a relic that the collector was looking for. It was a ring with rubies around the band. It did look a little damaged, but for it sitting in the den of a creature, I guess it looked as good as it could. On my way out, I caught a mutated amphipod before turning in to the researcher and finishing her task. I was almost there, and it felt like there were eyes watching me from within the darkness.
I have good news and bad news. Which do you want to hear first?
The good?
The good news is that I've honed in on what's causing the abnormalities in the ecosystem. The bad news is that the samples you retrieved from the basin have dangerously high counts of cellular mutations. This all points to one thing, that the basin is harmful to life at a cellular level. It damages everything around it, whether passively or with intent. I need to write up a report on my findings. Sorry, our findings. Immediately. Maybe now they'll take me seriously. Oh, how rude of me. You've done all this for me and I've not got much to say thank you with. You should have this. She opens a drawer and pulls out a book. Sheepishly, she hands it to you. This is something I wrote during my studies. I think it'll be useful to you. Thanks again for your help. I'd recommend that you avoid that area. It doesn't seem safe to be near the basin.
I rested for a little bit before heading back to the merchant to show her the gulper eel I had caught. I thought she might have wanted it to dissect it, or maybe to make it a trophy, but it seemed she just wanted to know more about it, so I ended up getting to keep it. After she gave me some research reports for my effort, I was able to sell her the eel for a nice bit of change. I took a moment or two to decide what I wanted to try and come up with, and in the end, I used those parts to get a new winch, which I bought and installed right away. I believed it would help make me more multifaceted in the end. Once it was installed, I got back on board my ship, and as I was leaving, I wasn't really paying attention and ended up crashing, so I had to make a quick U turn to repair the damage. While she was repairing my boat, I ended up emptying the cargo I had and making as much space as possible. While I was out, I ended up finding another flag lost in the waters. I did end up pushing the next day, fishing and dredging up materials that by the time I was returning to the pontoon, it was almost morning. My eyes must have been deceiving me because a waterspout with a weird red haze appeared out of nowhere, and it seemed to head straight for my boat. Luckily, I was able to avoid it and catch a few hours of rest. There was one more spot I wanted to check before heading back towards Greater Morrow to drop the relic off with the collector. On my way out there, I was able to see a whale surface before heading back under. It was quite a sight to see, truly amazing. Going around the small island, I found a giant vessel that had sunk. It must have been a supply vessel, as the stuff I was able to pull up from it was more of these boxes that were meant for or from Iron Haven. I wondered if that's what that giant structure I saw when I was exploring around the Morrows. I collected 3 boxes before heading back to rest as it was getting pretty late. I wasn't sure what it was, but it sounded like something was getting close to my ship. I kept moving as I didn't want to stop and risk it until I knew I was safe. I kept a lookout, trying to see if I could figure out what it was that I was hearing. I was finally able to grab a small glimpse of it when it came very close to the back of my vessel, but when I turned around to get a better look, it was gone. I rubbed my eyes and continued heading back to safety to get some sleep. In the morning, I cruised my way back to the merchant's pontoon to make sure my cargo hold was cleaned up before I went to collect my crab pot. There were a couple of lobsters in there I hadn't seen before, so I organized them into the cargo hold before using the word to bring me straight back to Blackstone Isle to drop off the relic for the collector. You walk in and place the jewel encrusted ring on a table by the collector. His eyes widen. We're certainly making excellent progress now, and I know what you're thinking. An item like this would fetch a fortune at any auction, but for us, its value transcends material wealth. Regardless, you are due a reward. He opens the crimson book, its spine cracking audibly. Selecting a page carefully, he begins to read aloud. The words sound muffled, as though he's speaking through a thick haze. You hear a growling crackling in your ears. Suddenly, your vision flares and both of your ears pop. He closes the book. We must keep searching. I've been thinking more on where we might find another. I can imagine all manner of detritus swallowed by the silty muck of Twisted Strands channels. It's worth investigating. I'll mark a location on your map where you can begin your search. Once I wrapped up with him, I headed to Greater Morrow to check in with the shipwright and see if she could help finish upgrading my ship and improving it further before I carried on with my day. The lighthouse keeper approaches you on the dock.
You must have been around most of the islands by now. Have you found what it is you're looking for?
I'm not sure. Her face softens.
Remember that you are in control. If you are having doubts, it's foolish to blindly persevere. You can always look for alternative paths.
She turns from you, shaking her head and muttering. She heads back towards the lighthouse. I upgraded my hull and bought a couple of fishing rods to make it so I can fish anywhere. I then went over to Little Morrow to check about selling some treasures, and I ended up talking instead to someone who told me about paints, dyes, and flags. He had told me that using aberrated fish, he could make dyes for my boat. Not having any on me, I instead handed him the two flags I had found, and he asked if I wanted one of them on my boat. I asked if I could see how both looked and ended up using the Ouroboros flag as I felt it was a better fit. I ended up forgetting to talk to the trader about any treasures I had found as I was more focused on getting to the structure off in the distance. Time had passed rather quickly and night fell, leaving me alone with just my light in the sea of darkness. The lights of the structure helped guide my path. I started to get a bit paranoid about something being in the water, so I decided to give the new word a try. It kept me safe for a period, but it seemed to run out before I got to the dock. I was able to get there without any incidents happening. I pulled up to a well lit dock, feeling really exhausted. You dock at a small metal wharf. Four giant legs stretch down into the deep, lifting a mountain of metal into the sky. Alright, folks, that's where we will stop with this episode of Dredge. I do appreciate anyone who has made it this far in the video. If you like what you saw, please hit the subscribe button and ring the bell to stay up to date with the series. To keep up with engagement, I'll leave you with a question. What would you say is the best kind of pasta, and what's the best sauce that goes with it? If you are curious on what happened on the rig, you'll have to come back for the next video. Until next time, I hope wherever you are, you have the best day possible. Alright, bye bye.